Welcome to Real Success with Steve Dennis. You are now tuned in to another episode of Real Success. This is the podcast where we share inspiring stories based on relationships, encouragement, attitude, and the leading of self. We're so glad you can join us. And now, here's your host, Steve Dennis.
Well, hello, my friends, and thank you so much for joining me with Real Success with Steve Dennis. It's a joy and a pleasure to be with you as I come and share with you lesson number 2 on defining moments that defined my leadership, that defined your leadership, okay? And wow, I enjoyed last week's episode, and today I'm going to give you the 2 more moments that I believe that literally help to define who we are as leaders. And let's go ahead and jump right in. But again, before I do that, I want to thank you, because here's what I know, that, really for you to give me your attention and to be a part of this episode. I am so humbled and grateful that you've joined me in this body of work. I never will underestimate or have a lack of appreciation that people do not have to tune in and listen to you. And I'm always honored and I'm always grateful to know that someone is listening to some of the things I have to share and to say. So I thank you for giving me your attention, because to me, your attention is so valuable, and it could be anywhere at this very moment, but you've chosen to lend it to me for a short period of time here today on this episode. So thank you so very much. Okay, so hey, let's jump in. I'm excited about it. And again, defining moments that defined your leadership, or that have defined my leadership. And you can make it personal, okay? Make the subject matter personal in your own life, all right? In fact, you ought to try it out for a minute. Defining moments that define my leadership. Just say it and think it. And it's amazing how so many different stories and episodes and events in your life will just kind of flash before your mind. That was that moment that literally defined your leadership. At my age and stage of life right now, I'm 54 years old, and I'm a grandparent. I'm a grandfather to 6 grandkids. And, there's a moment, my mom, when she transitioned in May of 1995, after I actually eulogized my own mom, that same day I went home, and what I did to kind of unwind is I went jogging. And I know it sounds kind of strange, but I went jogging, and as I was jogging and making the bend back towards my house, probably about 3 miles back then, and as I was coming back to my house, it's almost like I imagined my mom handing a baton off to me. And it was like I heard her voice say that my race on earth has come to an end, but yours is taking on a very new beginning. And when she handed that baton off in my hand, in my imagination, I found myself, even as I was jogging, I literally, and I never ran track as a kid, but as I was jogging, I reached my hand back like I was receiving that baton, like they do when they're running track and the relays and so forth. And as I was, running, jogging home, all of a sudden a big smile just showed up on my face. And it dawned on me, wow, what if I can act as if she just handed me a baton, the baton of leadership, the baton of her legacy. And my role in my job while I'm on the earth is to continue to do the same thing to other people. In other words, to be the legs of her legacy at the same time, while I also help to build legs of my own legacy. But that was a defining moment for me, because it was my way of choosing to be shaped in a positive fashion from that particular crisis or challenge of my mom's death. So with that being said, I just want to reemphasize to you and I that, again, if you look at moments in your life, you may be surprised with the shift that will show up as you recognize that those were they were defining moments that literally defined your leadership. The last time we were with you, we talked about those moments, and one of those moments was a groundbreaker, where they took you into an area that you'd never been before. The second moment that we shared with you was a heartbreaker, and they were moments that you realized that things were not going well. And you know what? We also talked to you about those 5 balls, if you remember that. Okay, the 5 different balls that in life. Again, you have work, family, health, friends, and spirit. And out of all 5 balls, only one of those balls is a rubber ball, and the rubber ball happens to be work. If you drop it, it'll bounce back. But the other 4, we shared with you from this particular keynote that was given by Brian Dyson, the former vice president and COO of Coca-Cola. He says that the other 4 balls are glass balls. If you drop one of them, that ball could either be scuffed, marked, nicked, damaged, or even shattered. And so the challenge was to make sure you and I are striving to have balance in our lives, and being shaped by those defining moments can help us to find that balance in life. Okay? And so anyway, let's go ahead and go to number 3, because I love this quote as we go to the third particular defining moment. I love this quote by Abraham Maslow. He said it this way. I just love it. We're either stepping forward into growth or stepping back into safety. Oh, I just love that quote, don't you? But here's the rub. You and I today, with these defining moments, my goodness, they challenge you and I to step forward day by day into growth, right? I mean, hey, you're growing. If you're listening to these episodes, this podcast gives you somewhat of a growth plan. You're going to hear something that will help you to grow in your journey, to grow with your journey. All right, here we go. So the third defining moment. Some defining moments were cloud breakers. Cloud breakers. And those cloud breakers, when they showed up, they literally, they let you and I soar like we've never soared before. Oh, I just love it. Don't you? Cloud breakers. And aren't you glad that with these defining moments that we don't just have the heartbreakers, and we don't just have the ground breakers, but we also have a cloud breaker. And that cloud breaker, again, are those moments where the clouds have cleared and you're able to soar like you've never soared before. Moments in your life that shaped your leadership and help to define you or redefine you as a person. I know for me, one in particular, after I became a juvenile probation officer, I did that for the first 2 years, and all of a sudden my upper leadership started noticing the effectiveness that I had with connecting with the kids. And my unit director talked with the superintendent of the school system at the time, and they came up with this plan. What would happen if we could literally have a probation officer who could go into the elementary schools to kind of help to offset the intensity of kids getting in trouble? And the person who basically, volunteered and said yes to that position was me. And it was a cloud-breaking moment for me, because I got a chance for the next 3 years to go into elementary schools and to take a curriculum that I was trained in, a law prevention curriculum, to share with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. And the school systems will allow me to come in, and teachers will give me an hour of their class time to teach this law curriculum in the school setting. And it was a cloud breaker. I'm going to go, and listen, if I can go real quick to share with you why it was a cloud breaker. Number one, it shaped my leadership. Oh my goodness. It shaped my leadership. It literally defined who I really was. In fact, as you can tell, I'm speaking now. I speak for a living. And back then, it was one of the first times that I had within the secular world, or the outside world, outside of a church setting. It was my first time getting a chance to take this talent or this gift that I have to speak, and to do that in a fashion with kids that literally made a difference. Let me tell you why. That was around the year 1994. 1993-94. And I moved away in 1996, came back to Georgia in 2000. And would you know that one day at a grocery store, a young man walked up to me and recognized me and called me by name. I did not recognize him. Let me tell you why. He said to me, he said, Mr. Dennis, I was in one of your classes when I was in the 4th or 5th grade. And he said, sir, I want to thank you for those law classes you would come in and teach. He said, what you didn't know back then is that I had already joined a gang. And one of those days that you came, I was supposed to have gone out with a gun and to be properly initiated within this gang to actually rob an older person. And because of some of the things you shared in that class, Mr. Dennis, I chose not to do that. And sir, I would be so honored if you could come to my graduation this upcoming Saturday. Oh, my friend, it was without a doubt a cloud-breaking moment for me. It was a moment that allowed me to soar like I had never soared before. And then the fourth defining moment I want to talk about today is some defining moments were chart breakers. And those chart breakers literally took you and I beyond your expectations. I want you to think about that for a moment. Think about that in your own life, how you've had cloud breakers, you've had a chart breaker, those moments that literally take you beyond. So if I could give you a summary of all of these defining moments, okay, just to kind of review them as we get ready to close. The first one, again, we talked about on last week, was a groundbreaker. And groundbreakers are those opportunities to do something new. They're opportunities to do something new. The second one are heartbreakers. And heartbreakers are those opportunities to reevaluate your priorities. Okay, so when heartbreakers show up, a good application piece for you today on this episode is to recognize that I have an opportunity to reevaluate my priorities. Going back to my story with my son, I had to reevaluate my priorities because I did not want to be just a public success, but a private failure. To be winning with everybody else, but to be losing within my home. Okay? So whenever you and I experience heartbreakers, just know, my friend, if you're taking notes, jot this down. Just know that in the midst of a heartbreaking moment, a defining moment, that you and I can reevaluate our priorities. And then thirdly, cloud breakers are those opportunities for you and I to have a clear vision. A clear vision. Because in my case, with teaching the children, the elementary school kids on law prevention, that gave me a vision as to what if I could do this on an ongoing basis. Wouldn't that be a wonderful life? And that life did not show up for another 10 years as far as me jumping into the field that I'm in now. But my whole point, it was seeded within me during that moment, that defining moment that shaped my leadership and caused me to have, my friend, a clearer vision. Hey, real quick before I go to the next one, what vision do you have? Where do you see yourself in 5 years from now? Just something to think about. And last but not least, the chart breaker. And chart breakers are those opportunities to go, get this, to literally go to a new level. To go to a new level. And that's what I learned. That's what I love about defining moments that define your leadership. And listen, my friend, if you're taking notes, one last question I want you to write down that I want to encourage you to memorize. It's going to be simple, but to memorize it and at the same time to apply it in everything that you do as a leader. Oh my goodness, this is going to help you. I got just less than a minute left, but let me share this with you. When you're dealing with every one of these, a groundbreaker, a heartbreaker, a cloud breaker, and a chart breaker, one of the most powerful questions to ask yourself in the midst of each one of those. Here we go. You ready? It's simple, but yet profound. And that question is simply this: what did I learn? What did I learn? And my friend, that one question that you ask yourself could literally help to transform and to transition you from one level to a whole new level. And it also allows you to be more easier and lighter on yourself and not as hard on yourself. What did I learn? Not what did I lose, but what did I learn? Oh, maybe perhaps we'll dive deeper into that question in the next episode. Defining moments that define your leadership. Hey, my friend, thank you so very much for joining me on this episode. I trust without a doubt. Yeah, you're probably smiling like I'm smiling right now because value has been added and you have heard, hey, I'm going to use this stuff, okay? I'm going to use what I just shared with you to have an awareness of those different defining moments that are still constantly defining and shaping my leadership. You be well. See you on the next episode.
Thanks for joining us this week. Be sure to visit the website at www.steveadennis.com. You can follow on Facebook and Instagram. Please subscribe to the podcast via Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify at stevedennis1.podbean.com. Be sure to tune in every Wednesday for new episodes. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next episode.